The only real difference between him and Bizarro is that he was small and had a very large, henpecking wife. In 1975, John Cleese created a character outrageous BBC executives worried it would end his career. The hotel owner hit his staff, who goosed around Germans who used words that made actors scream during filming, but the darkest part wasn't what viewers saw. It was with a band when the camera stopped be-drolling. One actor ended up in the hospital. Another fled to become a therapist, and 45 years later, streaming services pulled the episode that finale went too far. The reason will shock you. In May 1970, the Monty Python team checked into the Glen Eagles Hotel in Taki, expecting a quiet 3-week stay. Instead, they walked straight into a real-life horror show run by a man named Donald Sinclair. He was a former Navy officer who'd survived to shipwrecks during WPOO, but couldn't handle guests ordering tea. John Cleese later called him rudest man I've ever met, and that wasn't an exaggeration. Sinclair's bizarre behavior began almost immediately when Eric Idle left his briefcase in the lobby. Sinclair grew suspicious. It had a ticking alarm clock inside, and he assumed it was a bomb. So did what no sane hotelier would. He grabbed the case and hurled it out the window. Some even claimed he threw it off a cliff, though his widow laughed to deny that there are no cliffs near the hotel. When asked why an owner would bomb a hotel in Sleepy Devon, Sinclair replied, "We've had a lot of staff problems." But one sentence said it all. The entire Montafon group was so shaken that they packed up and left. Except for Cleese, he stayed, not because he enjoyed it, but because he couldn't look away. Something about Sinclair fascinated him. This man who insulted guests, polished eating habits, and refused to open the bar at lunchtime somehow felt like comedy gold. Cleese brought his wife Connie Booth back to the hotel and studied Sinclair like a human science project. He watched him micromanage tips, refused to let guests drink by the pool, and patrol the dining room like a prison warden. When him stopping guests mid-meal to correct their table manners, Sinclair aided Americans. 2. Terry Gilliam, the only American Python, was publicly corrected at dinner for using his fork the wrong way. Sinclair actually picked up his knife and said, "Sorry, we don't eat like that here," as if British table manners were national security. That one man's insanity became the foundation for Basil Fawlty. But Cleese didn't just copy Sinclair, he added something darker himself. While the show made people laugh, the truth behind it was a lot unsettling. Connie Booth later said that the character of Basil wasn't just based on Sinclair. It also reflected Cleese's own personality flaws. She described writing the series as a kind of therapy, and that explains a lot, especially when you at how Manuel, the Spanish waiter, was treated. Andrew Sachs, who played him, had fled Nazi Germany as a child. In the show, he played the clueless immigrant constantly abused by Basil, but behind the scenes, it wasn't all acting. Cleese actually hit him during film, and Sachs once said, "He hit me so hard I fell over and couldn't get up." Who was burned by chemical smoke effects, struck with a metal saucepan instead, Ofa rubber one, and when he asked for an apology, Cleese told him to pull yourself together and offered him a drink instead. Cleese's explosive behavior wasn't new. During his Monty Python years, tensions got so bad that Tara Jones once threw a typewriter at him. On Towers, that same need for control drove everything. He made off-casting decisions, overruled ad reducers, and ran the set like Basil ran the hotel. The irony was brutal. He had become the character he invented. The tension was even worse for Connie Booth. While filming the first season in 1975, she and Cleese were still married. By this season, in 1979, they were divorced, but no one on set knew. They acted like everything was fine. Booth later quit acting and became a therapist, saying the show had been a way to deal with Cleese's flaws. She held her anger and heartbreak into Polly, the calm voice of reason among the chaos. That character became her outlet. And then there was Prunella Skulls, who played Sybil Fawlty. Cleese created her to represent the kind of overbearing wife he feared becoming trapped with. In one episode, Sybil's medical records list her age as 34, but was 43 when they filmed it. Shantz joked that Sybil only married Basil because his family was higher up the social ladder than hers. The Hala character was a jab at class insecurity, and maybe at Cleese's own crumbling mirror. The show's darkest casting decision, though, was Ballard Berkeleus Major Gowan. Cleese wanted someone who could deliver racist lines without flinching. Berkeley was born in 1904 and had Therrett look for an old colonial fossil. In one infamous scene, the Major used racial slurs to describe cricket teams. Even in 1975, that was pushing it. When Fawlty Towers first aired on September 19, 1975, it didn't set the world on fire, not even close. The debut on BBC Two pulled in a small crowd, mostly people curious to see what John Cleese would do after Monty Python. But the critics weren't impressed. They didn't get it. The wild, chaotic energy of Python had been replaced by a sitcom set in a tiny hotel. Some thought it was boring. Others thought it was doomed. Even inside the BBC, memos were going around questioning whether the whole thing would work. But underneath that early confusion, something was changing. Cleese and co-writer Connie Booth weren't just writing another sitcom. They were doing something entirely new. Faster dialogue, tighter editing, deeper characters. It wasn't immediately obvious, but audiences began to catch on. Their action was electric. This wasn't like anything they'd seen before, and they couldn't get enough of it. The magic of Fawlty Towers wasn't just in what aired, it was in what didn't. Only 12 episodes were ever made. Just 2 seasons. That was it. But those 12 episodes took 43 weeks of work per season. Every joke, every argument, every chaotic scene was planned down to the last second. Cleese obsessed over everything. Even tiny things like whether both Basil and Manoir should have mustaches became long debates. 2 mustaches in one frame is too much, he argued. But the perfectionism wasn't just about comedy. There was something darker underneath. Cleese and Booth were married when they started the show. By the second season, they were heading for divorce. That gap between the first season in 1975 and the second in 1979. It wasn't just about writing, it wasn't just about surviving the process. The show was killing their relationship. In 1978, they officially split. Finishing the final season took everything they had left. Despite the chaos behind Thessalonians, the show started racking upwards. It won the BAFTA for Best Scripted Comedy in both 1976 and 1980. The audience finally got it. So did thought critics, but not everyone behind the curtain was celebrating. Andrew Sachs, who played Manuel, had kept a dark secret for years. In 2014, he revealed that filming the show was physically dangerous for him, sometimes horrifying. During one scene, Clay was supposed to hit him with a soft padded frying pan, but in the final take, Clay used a Sachs was knocked out cold. He hit me so hard, I couldn't get up. Sachs said he ended up with burns, bruises, and a doctor's warning that one injury would scar him for life. When Sachs asked Cleese for an apology, he didn't get one. Cleese told him to pull yourself together and offered him a baby jam instead. BBC paid Sachs just $700 for everything. Yet somehow, even with all that, the show exploded across the world. By 1976, Fawlty Towers was already airing in Sweden and the Netherlands. In 1977, at Australian TV. By the end of 1978, Fawlty Towers was showing in more than a dozen countries. It was dubbed and translated into languages all across Europe. People from different cultures, different histories, different senses, were all laughing at the same disaster-prone hotel owner in Tokyo on October 24, 1975. Something strange happened on British TV. An episode of Fawlty Towers aired on BBC Two that was so funny, yet sound comfortable that it became the most controversial of the entire series. It was the 6th episode written by John Cleese and Connie Booth. Many called it the show's masterpiece. But not everyone was glowing. Right from the start, it felt instead of the usual opening shot of the hotel with the famous Liscrimbled sign, the episode began at Northwick Park Hospital in London. That alone threw off regular viewers. It also cost more than other episodes thanks to complex hospital sets and Bessel's over-the-top meltdown scene. But it wasn't just the setting or staging. It was what happened on screen that made Eton forgettable and deeply troubling. In any of the first scenes, Basil walks down a hospital hallway and comes face-to-face with a black doctor. He stops his body, jerks back in what looks like surprise or even fear. It lasts a second. There's no line of dialogue, just that one sudden move. It might seem small, but it spoke volumes. Was it exorcism? Was it just Basil being awkward and panicked like he often is? Nobody really knows. Even now, people argue about what it meant. Cleese reportedly improvised the moment, and the director kept it. That reaction, silent and powerful, set the tone for what was coming, and what came next was chaos. Halfway through the episode, things go from odd to outrageous. Basil, already stressed and recovering from a concussion, begins serving dinner to guests at the hotel. Over and over, he tells the staff, "Don't mention Thawad." Then, of course, he can't stop talking about it. He rattles off war references, slips into Nazi phrases. Anton suddenly transforms into Hitler. Yes. Basil goose-steps around the drawing room, barking in German and mimicking bumming raids. It lasted nearly 5 minutes. It was loud, extreme, and shocking. He even made up dish names like a prawn gerbils and a Hermigring. The worst part, the Germanguists weren't extras. They were actual German actors. Their horrified expressions weren't all scripted. They were reacting to Cleese's real one of them even and at the very end, after their restaurant has descended into madness, a German guest quietly asks, "However, did they win?" That line would be quoted for ducats, but none of that was what got the episode pulled years later. Instead, the real problem came from an older actor, Major Gowan. During a scene that seemed harmless at first, the Major starts talking to Basil about cricket. Then he says something awful. He uses the N-word, not once, 3 times. And also uses a racial slur for Indian players. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't even exaggerated, it was just him speaking like it was normal. Even in 1975, people were stunned. The actor, Arthur Brew, hated saying the lines. He needed several takes to get through them. Thegel, according to the writers, was Tajo how outdated and offensive the mayor's views were. But many felt it didn't matter. Showing racism, even to mock it, was still giving it airtime. That one scene, only 90 seconds long, was later edited out of reruns. And in 2020, UK TV removed the entire episode from its streaming service. They said racial slurs had no place anymore. Times have changed, the platform explained. But not everyone saw it. That, when Fawlty Towers was first offered to German broadcasters in the early 1990s, the BBC left out this episode. They figured German audience would find it insulting. But when German TV channels found out about the missing show in 1993, they asked for it. Actually, they insisted. The BBC gave in. To everyone's shock, German viewers loved it. They weren't offended. In fact, the episode became one of the most popular when it finally aired. Why? Because they got the joke. It wasn't mocking Germans, it was mocking British people. Specifically how many of them still clung to outdated views. Rainer's Germans saw Basil not as a hero but as a walking disaster, a symbol of everything wrong with post-war jargons, but that wasn't the only controversial scene. One of the most disturbing moments came from Major Gowan's racist cricket story. He said the N-word to describe West Indians and called Indians WS. That line was removed from rerun starting in 2013 after discussions with John Coles's team. But the rest of the show's racial insensitivity remained untouched. This wasn't just a one-off moment. Across the series, characters from different ethnic backgrounds were assigned as easy targets for jokes. Anytime a non-English guest appeared at the hotel, it usually ended in some sort of